Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Nguyen, and I am a PhD candidate in ancient history in the Department of Classics. I am a refugee from Vietnam, a first-generation high school and college grad, and I am also slated to be the first woman to receive a doctorate degree from the ancient history program here at Brown University. Today, I would like to share with you how I came to my dissertation project. I was exasperated from having classicists, upon finding out that I am Vietnamese, ask me whether or not I had read Jonathan Shea's Achilles in Vietnam, an infamous study in the field of classical reception that demonstrates the utility of ancient Greek literature, especially the Homeric Iliad, in processing the war trauma of American combat veterans from the Vietnam War. Yes, I had read it, or rather struggled through it, as I had to brace myself for every racial slur that popped up in the veterans' accounts of the Vietnam War. Shea's work was problematic to me in a way that other classicists did not seem to notice. While Shea's study centers the experiences of American veterans of the Vietnam War, elevating their trauma to the register of Greek mythology, it relegates Vietnamese people to the margins of history, either victimizing or demonizing them. The index of Achilles in Vietnam is telling enough of how Vietnamese people are actively disremembered in his work and more broadly within the American imagination. Vietnamese does not appear as a standalone gloss. In its place is Viet Cong, with the additional gloss, see enemy Vietnamese. What is even more disturbing is the fact that Shea's work has inspired a whole subfield of classical reception that privileges the American experience to the detriment of the Vietnamese. As I began to notice the active disremembering of Vietnamese people within the field of classics, my exasperation evolved into a desire to ethically remember Vietnamese people, even or perhaps especially within a field such as classics, a field that has not only historically been Western-centric, but has also been used to sanction violent societal structures such as racism and imperialism. Why has Vietnam not appeared in classics except as a metonym for the Vietnam War? This was especially baffling to me since Vietnamese is one of the few Asian languages whose national written script has officially been Romanized. On top of that, the French Empire colonized Vietnam under the belief that they had inherited the Roman Empire and were tasked with the duty of spreading Latin civilization to more inferior cultures. Vietnam also serves as a particularly illuminating case study due to the fact that while French colonial administrators applied a blank slate approach to subjugate other territories, in Vietnam, they had to reckon with the legacies of the Chinese Empire, complete with its own classical canon that were so deeply embedded in Vietnamese society. In my dissertation, therefore, I investigate the overlooked history of the Greco-Roman classical tradition in Vietnam and its entanglement with Western imperialism from the French colonial era in the mid-19th century to the present post-colonial moment. I show the ways in which the French and American empires have racialized Greco-Roman antiquity to construct myths of themselves and of the Vietnamese to authorize their imperial projects. I argue that Vietnamese people have in turn reworked Greek and Roman literature to challenge these myths about themselves that range from the ideal colonized people to the good refugee. So for example, I analyze how the contemporary Vietnamese American writer Ocean Vuong engages with the Homeric Odyssey in his poetry collection, Night Sky with Exit Wounds. Instead of a traditional Nostos, Vuong's Odysseus returns home dead. Meanwhile, Vuong's Telemachus struggles to understand what traits, memories, and legacies he inherits from his father as he embarks on his journey to self-discovery as a young queer man. By killing Odysseus and inverting his fate in his poems, Vuong asks what would happen to Telemachus had Odysseus not returned home from war. Would Telemachus have had to flee from Ithaca and become a refugee? Would Odysseus' story have been preserved? And if so, how, where, and by whom? Would the traditions of masculinity hold up in the face of displacement? I argue that Vuong disrupts the mythological narrative in order to explore the conflicting layers of his intergenerational trauma and to insert his post-war transnational perspective into the Western memory of Vietnam and its infamous war, and ultimately to challenge historical erasure. Throughout my dissertation, I analyzed the tension between the perceived value and the real threats of classics for Vietnamese communities in and beyond Vietnam. And I contend that Vietnamese communities, both national and diasporic, have used the classical tradition as a means for imperial critique. Thank you all for attending this event, and thank you to those who made this event possible, and thank you to the Cogut Institute for providing me with the space and community to pursue this research.